Hey everyone, a quick heads up. Most people who enjoy these stories haven't subscribed yet. If you're liking the content, consider subscribing and dropping a like. It truly supports the channel. And I'm glad you're here. Also, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from, so share your location in the comments. I've been driving big rigs across the country for over 20 years. I know the road, the rhythm of the engines, and the way darkness can play tricks on your mind. But that night was different. I still can't explain it, and I don't expect anyone else to. It was just past midnight. I was rolling through I-75, somewhere in northern Georgia, hauling a refrigerated load of produce from Atlanta to Cincinnati. My truck, a 2019 Freightliner Cascadia, hummed beneath me, tires whispering over the wet asphalt. Rain had fallen off and on all evening, leaving the highway slick and shimmering under my headlights. Fog was settling in fast, thick and wet, curling around the wheels like smoke. The kind of fog that makes the lines on the road vanish and makes mile markers feel like suggestions rather than guidance. I usually talk to other drivers on the CB when I'm alone. That night, the static was loud, crackling like electricity under a storm cloud. Breaker 19, I called out, my voice low, routine. A few muffled acknowledgements drifted back, but nothing unusual. Just the usual hum of long-haul chatter, trucks sharing updates on way stations, traffic, deer sightings. The overpass came into view, a concrete stretch spanning the highway, shadowed and dripping with fog. From a distance, it looked normal, but as I got closer, I felt it before I saw it. That gut-tightening sense that something wasn't right. I noticed movement underneath the overpass, shadows flicking along the supports. At first, I assumed it was a maintenance crew or some trespassers, maybe a group of kids fooling around. But the highway was deserted. No exits, no service roads. Nothing. I slowed, my hands tightening on the steering wheel. The cab felt colder than it should, the AC off. My breath fogged the edges of the windshield, even though it wasn't that cold outside. The CB crackled again, sharper this time, and I swear I heard a whisper. Just one word. My name. Rick. I froze. My heart started pounding in that slow, relentless way it does when adrenaline catches up to you. I tapped the mic again, voice steady though my fingers shook. Anybody there? Breaker 19. Silence. Just static, like the air itself was refusing to carry sound. I drove under the overpass, careful, eyes scanning every shadow. The movement stayed, stretching unnaturally across the lanes, almost like smoke drifting sideways in defiance of the wind. There was no pattern, no explanation. I could see faint shapes, human-like but wrong. Limbs too long, heads tilting at angles that shouldn't exist. The smell hit me then. Wet asphalt mixed with something metallic, like rusted iron, and a sour note I couldn't place. Decay, maybe. I slammed on the brakes instinctively, just short of the center line, trying to make sense of what I saw. The shadows didn't scatter. They lingered, bending around the fog, almost aware I was watching. I flicked on the brights, trying to catch a better look, but the fog swallowed the light, scattering it in every direction. My dash cam recorded it all, though I didn't realize it at the time. I tried to radio the nearest trucker again, desperation creeping in. Breaker 19. Anyone copy? Nothing. I exhaled, trying to calm myself. Okay, Rick, I muttered under my breath. It's just fog. You're tired. It's late. But I couldn't shake the unease crawling up my arms, into my shoulders. The truck didn't feel like a machine under me anymore. It felt like a fragile barrier between me and whatever was out there. Then I saw it. A hand, pressed against my windshield. I nearly jerked into the median, heart hammering. It wasn't a reflection. Not mine. Not anything I could explain. Pale, long fingers sliding across the glass from the outside. I blinked. Gone. I thought maybe it was condensation, my eyes playing tricks. But then the CB crackled again, closer this time, clearer. My name, repeated in the static as though someone, or something, was tracing its way toward me. Rick. Rick. I hit the brakes again, eyes scanning. No one. Nothing. Just fog, Rain. The endless hum of my engine. The vibration through the steering wheel felt different now. Like the truck itself was tense, reacting to something I couldn't feel directly. Goosebumps rose along my arms under the fluorescent glow of the dashboard. I realized the shadows weren't just on the road. They were following me, stretching along the asphalt, bending around the fog, disappearing into the rain. Every mile marker I passed felt wrong. Like I'd been there before, but the numbers weren't what I remembered. Time felt stretched, like I was driving in a loop. The GPS kept flickering, recalculating, sometimes showing my own truck's outline reversed, moving backward along the highway. By the time I cleared the overpass, my hands were clammy, knuckles white. I glanced at the dashcam feed, thinking maybe I could rationalize it later. That's when I saw them. Faint handprints, pressed against the windshield, translucent, smearing across the glass like someone had been trapped there and pressed their palms against it. I blinked. They vanished. I tried to chalk it up to exhaustion, but the cab smelled of ozone now, a sharp electric scent that made the back of my throat burn. The road was empty, the fog thinning, but the air still heavy, unnatural. The CB was silent, no chatter, no static. Just that oppressive quiet that makes the hair on your neck stand on end. I drove the next few hours in near silence, only breaking it to mutter to myself, recounting every detail like a confession. My hands never left the wheel. My eyes never left the road. I didn't see any more shadows, no more hands. Just fog thinning into the early morning, pale stars muted above the highway. But I knew they were there, somewhere, watching, waiting. When I finally stopped at a rest area just past Chattanooga, I turned off the engine and sat in the cab, staring at nothing. The truck felt normal again, but the memory lingered, settling in my chest like a weight I couldn't shake. I left the dashcam running, reviewing the footage. The shadows didn't show on the main screen, but when I zoomed in, I could see faint outlines, almost like smoke, stretching across the lanes. And the handprints, clear as day, pressed against the windshield, then gone when I blinked. I don't talk about it much, not with other drivers, not with anyone. Most would laugh it off, call it fatigue or fog. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And every time I get on the CB late at night, when the line goes quiet and the static creeps in, I swear I can still hear it. My name whispered just beyond comprehension. I still hear the engine behind me every time the CB goes quiet. I've been behind the wheel of a rig for over 15 years, running long hauls across the country. You learn to trust the road, your truck, and the rhythm of engines around you. But there are nights you don't trust anything. Not the pavement, not the GPS, not even your own senses. One night like that changed me, and I still can't explain it. I was rolling west on Route 66, hauling a load of frozen goods from Chicago to Los Angeles. My rig was an old Kenworth T680, black with polished chrome, tires humbling against the asphalt. The night was dead quiet, the kind of silence only the desert can produce. I had been driving for hours, headlights slicing through the darkness, CB crackling now and then with other night drivers, but nothing unusual. It was around 3 a.m., and the desert air was thin and sharp, smelling faintly of ozone and dust. I had the AC off, letting the natural chill brush against my face. I checked my GPS. It insisted there was a way station coming up. Standard routine. Pull in, log my weight, maybe grab a coffee. Nothing worth noting. But when the lights appeared in the distance, I felt that familiar crawl of unease in my chest. The station looked old. Lights flickered, fluorescent tubes buzzing softly, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt. The signs were peeling, letters missing from years of neglect. I slowed to a crawl, assuming maybe the place was just poorly maintained. I had my CB open, calling out a casual, "Breaker 19, anyone here?" Only static answered. I eased my truck toward the entrance, expecting a line of trucks, maybe a sleepy clerk. That's when I saw them. Figures standing in the lanes, trucks lined up behind them. At first, I thought it was other drivers, but as I drew closer, my stomach dropped. Their forms were translucent, faces frozen in grim expressions, staring straight ahead as if they weren't aware of me at all. Their bodies flickered in and out, like heat waves on the pavement. I rubbed my eyes, thinking fatigue was getting the better of me. I'd done long hauls before. My mind could play tricks after hours behind the wheel. But when I leaned on the horn, the figures didn't react. The trucks behind them, ghostly rigs, polished chrome gleaming even in the dim, flickering lights, crept forward silently, engines making no sound. Not a rumble, not a growl, nothing. A shiver ran down my spine. I glanced at the GPS again. The route was still clear. The map insisted the way station was there. Yet the desert around it stretched endlessly, barren except for this one impossible place. I lifted my foot off the brake, letting the truck roll slowly. My tires made the only sound, squealing softly on the worn asphalt. I reached for the CB again. Anyone copy? Nothing. Just static, whispering faintly as if the desert itself was humming. I tried to reason it out. Maybe the figures were workers frozen mid-task, maintenance ghosts left behind in some surreal trick of light. Maybe the trucks were parked in a way that made the silhouettes flicker. Maybe the flickering lights played games with my mind. Rational explanations, all of them, but none of them made the chill in my chest go away. As I eased forward, the translucent drivers didn't move, but the ghost trucks behind them began to inch closer. Slowly, silently, advancing without engines, without wheels seeming to roll. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter, feeling the vibration fade as if the truck itself was tense, resisting the pull of some unseen force. The air smelled different now, metallic, cold, a faint hint of burnt rubber that wasn't coming from my rig. I hit the gas, just enough to pull past them, to escape the lane of motionless horror. My headlights cut through the fog of light and shadow, illuminating the cracked pavement and flickering signs one last time. My heart was hammering. The CB was quiet, and when I glanced in the mirrors, nothing followed. The figures, the trucks, the station, all gone. Just empty desert stretching back, pale and indifferent under the muted stars. I took the next exit instinctively, not caring where it led. Route 66 opened into nothing but sand, scrub, and distant mountains. I slowed, trying to convince myself it had been some illusion, a trick of light, fatigue, desert heat playing games with shadows. I checked my GPS again. The way station was gone, disappeared from the map as if it had never existed. The desert was empty, silent, except for the steady hum of my engine. Even after hours of driving, the memory lingered. I replayed the event in my mind, trying to parse the impossible. How could a way station appear on my GPS, fully functioning, with trucks and drivers, and vanish moments later? How could the figures stand so still, yet feel alive, and the trucks move without a sound? Every rational explanation I had, the desert heat, fatigue, hallucination, crumbled under the weight of what I had seen. I've been on that road countless times since, on different trucks at different hours. I've checked that GPS countless times. The desert is still the desert, barren and indifferent. But sometimes, when I roll past mile markers at 3 a.m., I swear I see lights flickering in the distance, faint and almost imperceptible. And I can almost hear it. The quiet, impossible hum of an engine with no source, like a warning or a memory etched into the road. I don't talk about it much. Most drivers would dismiss it, laugh it off. But I know the truth. Some places exist only at certain hours. Some memories of the road are carved into reality, lingering long after you think you've passed them. And that night, I drove past one of them, the way station that never was. I still think about it, every long haul, every lonely mile. The desert has a way of hiding things in plain sight. And some things, no matter how far you drive, you can't leave behind. I still feel it sometimes, that trace in the air, that weight in the cab. The next time you're alone on a highway at 3 a.m., lights flickering in the distance, think twice before you slow down. I've been driving big rigs for close to 20 years, logging miles from the Florida Keys to the Canadian border. Most nights are uneventful. You get into a rhythm. The hum of your tires, the whine of your engine, the static chatter on the CB. But some nights, Some nights are different. Some nights leave a mark you can't shake. This was one of them. It was late spring in Pennsylvania, around 2 a.m., and I was hauling a refrigerated load of dairy from Harrisburg to Pittsburgh. The storm had rolled in suddenly, violent sheets of rain pounding the highway, turning every lane into a slick, reflective ribbon. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. My Freightliner Cascadia groaned as the wipers barely kept pace, tires hissing on the wet asphalt. CB chatter was minimal. Most truckers had pulled over. I kept going, cautious, watching every curve and crest of the road. That's when I saw him, a figure standing at the edge of the shoulder, thumb raised. He was drenched, soaked through to the bone, hair plastered to his forehead. At first, I assumed he was just some lost kid trying to make it to the next town. But there was something off. His posture was too straight, too deliberate. No shivering, no struggle against the wind and rain. Just standing there, motionless except for that thumb. I pulled over carefully, tires squelching into the mud. As he climbed into the cab, the first thing I noticed was his silence. Not a word. No thanks or where you headed? Nothing. Just the faint smell of wet earth clinging to his soaked clothes. The chill radiating off him almost like a living thing. His eyes caught mine briefly, hollow, like twin wells of black water. I swallowed hard and glanced at the dashboard. The temperature read 42 degrees. I had the heater on full. Where you headed? I asked, trying to break the ice. No answer. I shrugged, not wanting to push. I kept my eyes on the road, the rain hammering the windshield like a drum. Mile markers slid past, indistinct in the storm. That's when I noticed it. The cab was getting colder. Gradually at first, like stepping into a shadow, then sharply, goosebumps crawling up my arms. I reached for the heater controls, full blast, but it did nothing. I could see my breath fogging in the cab, hanging in the air between us. The hitchhiker didn't move. He just stared straight ahead, eyes fixed on the windshield, and lifted a finger, pointing toward the road. I followed the gesture subconsciously, and that's when I saw them. First, I thought it was a trick of the rain. Faint outlines, blurry figures along the roadside. But the more I looked, the more defined they became. Dozens of them, pale and shadowy, walking in rhythm with the highway, no faces, no expressions. Just silhouettes, stretching along the shoulder, following us silently, perfectly spaced like ghosts marching in formation. My heart started hammering. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Everywhere I looked, they were there, keeping pace with the truck, yet making no sound. I tried conversation again, voice shaking despite my attempts at calm. Hey, you okay? Do you see them? He didn't respond, just kept pointing. I tried rationalizing it. Rain reflection, road signs, shadow play. I'm used to late-night hallucinations from exhaustion. But my hands were gripping the wheel tight, knuckles white. The vibration from the truck felt different now, like the cab itself was tense, responding to some invisible pressure. The air smelled metallic, like cold iron mixed with wet dirt. Every mile passed felt longer than it should, each second dragging in a way that made time feel elastic. The storm intensified, lightning briefly illuminating the road. In those flashes, I saw them more clearly. Tall, thin, faceless, featureless silhouettes, spaced perfectly along both sides of the highway. I tried braking, slowing, even veering into the shoulder, but they mirrored my every movement. Always there, always watching, always following. I swallowed hard, voice low. We need to get to town. You need help or something? Nothing. Every instinct in me screamed to stop, to turn around, to escape. But I couldn't. The road ahead was slick, dark, and endless. The hitchhiker's gaze didn't waver. His finger never left the windshield. I felt frozen in place, caught between the natural terror of the storm and the unnatural terror of what was trailing me. By the time I finally reached the edge of the next town, small lights shimmering through the rain, I risked a glance at the seat beside me. The hitchhiker was gone, completely gone. Not slumped, not fallen, not hiding, just not there. The seatbelt had been fastened, the wet mat still damp with water, but no one was in the cab. I stepped on the brakes, heart pounding, and looked back at the road. Empty. No silhouettes. No storm shadows. Just the regular night, dripping and muddy, as if nothing had happened. The chill remained in the cab, though, clinging to my shoulders like an invisible weight. I could still feel it in my chest, in the back of my neck. The smell lingered too. A faint, metallic cold, and wet earth. I don't know who or what it was. A phantom, a spirit, a projection of exhaustion? Maybe the storm itself opened a door to something else. But I know one thing. I've never picked up another hitchhiker in the middle of a storm. Not after that night. And every time I drive alone, rain hammering against the windshield, I can't shake the memory of that silent figure, pointing, and the endless silhouettes keeping pace with my truck in perfect, spectral silence. Some things on the road you can't explain. You can only survive them, remember them, and drive on. And I still feel that chill in the cab whenever the storm hits Pennsylvania in the dead of night, like the hitchhiker is still pointing me forward, toward something I'm not supposed to see. I don't talk about it. Most drivers would laugh. But I know what I saw, and I'll never forget it. I still feel it sometimes, that frozen cold, that unblinking gaze. And every time it rains, I instinctively glance at the shoulder, just in case. I've been driving across the country for nearly 2 decades. I know the rhythms of the road, the hum of tires, the whine of the engine, the occasional pop of a CB static. I've seen plenty. Deer that jump out of nowhere, slick patches of ice, trucks gone silent in the night. But some nights are different. They leave something in you that you can't explain. Mile marker 237 on I-80 is one of those nights. It was a quiet night, the kind that makes you grateful for the isolation. I was hauling a load of electronics from Chicago to Cleveland, my Kenworth W900 groaning beneath the weight. The highway stretched straight ahead, endless ribbons of asphalt disappearing into fog that had settled like a shroud. I had been driving for hours, eyes adjusting to the muted stars above, headlights cutting feebly through the mist. The CB chatter was sparse, 1 or 2 drivers sharing mile updates, but mostly just static and the occasional sigh of wind through the rig's frame. That's when I saw it. Mile marker 237. I'd passed it countless times, known it well, but tonight, it felt wrong. Something about the number seemed off, like the marker itself had shifted subtly, leaning the wrong way, edges shadowed unnaturally in the fog. And then I noticed the figure. It was crouched by the side of the road, barely visible, blending with the mist. I slowed instinctively, squinting through the wipers. The figure didn't move, didn't shift, just crouched there, staring, or maybe just existing. My gut tightened. I blinked. When I opened my eyes again, it was gone. No footprints, no disturbance in the fog, nothing. I tried to shrug it off. Fatigue, shadows, fog. I hit the CB. Breaker 19. Anyone out there? The static answered, long and unbroken. But then, faintly, a voice whispered, distorted, unfamiliar. Don't stop. I froze, hand on the wheel. My knuckles whitened. I tried to reason. Maybe some prankster on another frequency, messing with long-haul drivers. But the voice didn't sound like anyone I knew. And the timing, right after seeing that figure, made my stomach knot. The fog thickened, crawling along the asphalt in slow waves. Headlights cut through it, illuminating details that didn't belong. Faint scratches on the road, claw marks, etched deep into the pavement. The kind that looked like someone or something had tried desperately to climb up onto the highway. I swallowed hard. Rational explanations began and failed. Tree roots? Animal tracks? Fallen debris? Nothing fit. I kept driving, eyes locked straight ahead. I didn't look back. Every mile marker passed felt wrong. Time itself seemed stretched, uneven. My hands tingled on the wheel, goosebumps rising under the fluorescent glow of the dashboard lights. The vibration of the truck felt muted, dull, like the rig itself was hesitant to continue. The CB crackled again, this time closer, sharper. My name, my full name, spoke through the static. The hair on my neck stood on end. I tried to respond, voice steady, but firm. "This is Rick." "Who's there?" Silence. Then the whisper again. "Mile 237. I pressed forward. Fog pressed in from all sides, swallowing the beams of my headlights, muting the road, the trees, the asphalt. The scratches multiplied, appearing in front of my tires now, wet and dark, like someone had clawed at the road just moments ago. I could feel it in my chest, the weight of unseen eyes, something pacing just beyond vision, keeping pace with my truck. I remember the thought crossing my mind: missing truckers, local news stories I'd skimmed over in diners and rest stops, names that vanished off highways, last seen near mile marker 237. I pushed the thought away. I needed to drive, needed to survive. Minutes passed, or hours, I couldn't tell. The fog began to thin slightly as I approached the next bend. I glanced briefly in the mirrors, something I immediately regretted. Faint shadows stretched along the roadside, featureless, humanoid, motionless. They weren't moving, but the sense of following pressed down on me, like gravity I could feel in my chest. I kept forward, speed steady, tires hissing against the wet asphalt. Every instinct screamed to turn around, to abandon the rig and run. But I couldn't. The road demanded that I continue, that I obey some unspoken law of survival. When I finally saw the lights of the next rest stop in the distance, relief surged. I eased off the throttle, but the shadows lingered in the corner of my vision. I didn't look at them again. By the time I reached the parking lot, they were gone. The fog was gone. The claw marks were gone. The world was normal, utterly ordinary, as if nothing had happened. The next day, over coffee and a grim breakfast at the truck stop diner, I overheard chatter on the radio and the news. Another trucker missing. Last seen near mile marker 237. My stomach dropped, but I kept my face neutral, sipping coffee as if nothing had changed. My rig was safe, the highway silent, but I knew I had brushed against something that night that wasn't meant to be explained. I don't talk about it with other drivers. Most wouldn't believe it. Some would laugh, some would shake their heads. But I know what I saw, and I know the feeling. The fog, the whispering CB, the scratches on the road, the weight in the cab. Even now, years later, I can't drive past that mile marker without a knot in my stomach. Even now, when I'm alone on I-80 at night, I feel it. The unseen eyes, the cold air, the tug of something impossible brushing against the rig. And I still think about the truckers who vanished there, swallowed by the road, never found. Some nights, long after I've parked and shut down, I hear the echo in my mind, the whisper from the static, mile 237. And I remember once again that some places on the highway aren't just points on a map. They're thresholds. Some things you pass once and carry with you forever. I still feel it sometimes, that cold, that silent pressure, like the highway itself is watching. And every time I pass mile marker 237, I drive a little faster, never glancing back. I've been driving across the Smoky Mountains for nearly 20 years, hauling everything from produce to machinery, and I thought I'd seen it all. Slick roads, sudden rock slides, fog so thick it swallowed the headlights. But there's a stretch of road near Cherokee that I'll never forget. A night that changed the way I look at the cab of my truck. It was well past midnight. I was heading west, alone in my 2017 Freightliner Cascadia, loaded with refrigerated goods bound for Atlanta. The night pressed in on all sides, the kind of darkness that feels almost tactile, thick with moisture and silence. The CB was quiet, only faint static now and then, the occasional murmur from a trucker miles behind. Rain had fallen earlier, leaving patches of wet asphalt, the smell of ozone and damp pine lingering in the cab. The heater hummed softly, keeping the chill from seeping too far in. Somewhere near a deserted curve, I felt it first, a subtle weight shift behind me. I froze, gripping the steering wheel tight, blinking against the dim light of the dashboard. At first, I thought I'd imagined it. Long hours on the road can do that. Your mind inventing shadows, phantom presences in the empty seat behind you. But then came the sound. Quiet, measured breathing, coming from the back seat. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay steady. Hello? Is someone back there? Nothing. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The seat had depressed slightly, like someone had leaned back or settled into it. I spun the cab chair slowly to face the back. Empty. The seat was untouched, the seatbelt still clipped in. I chalked it up to exhaustion, a trick of the lights or the cushion giving way after years of wear. I pressed on, but the sensation didn't leave. Every glance in the mirrors carried fleeting shapes, like smoke taking form. A woman in a pale dress, a child with hollow eyes, vanishing the instant I focused on them. I could feel the air grow colder, sharp and metallic, like frost forming in midair. Goosebumps ran up my arms, and the heater's hum seemed distant, muted, failing to keep the chill at bay. At first, I rationalized everything. It's fog, reflections, the shadows of trees. I muttered under my breath. I'm tired, just tired. But the shapes continued, always at the edge of vision, and with each passing mile, I could sense the presence behind me. Not threatening, exactly, but heavy, like a weight pressing down on my chest through the cab. The road twisted, climbing steeply, curves tight and slick from previous rain. Every time I navigated a bend, I caught glimpses in the mirrors of something sitting, always sitting, watching me silently. I tried speaking again. I can't see you, but I know you're there. Just leave me alone. No reply, just the soft, rhythmic breathing. Lightning flashed across the mountains, illuminating the interior of the cab for a brief second. In that instant, I thought I saw her, pale hair hanging damp across her face, eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my stomach clench. I turned sharply to look back, and she was gone. Just the empty seat, the faint impression in the cushion. I forced my mind to rationalize it. Exhaustion, the long drive, the isolation. But even as I drove, I could feel the cab vibrating subtly, not from the engine, but from something else. Like the truck itself was aware of the weight in the back. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white, sweat mingling with the chill rising on my skin. The CB crackled faintly, static, nothing more. The hour passed slowly, each minute stretching. I didn't dare slow down, didn't dare stop, not for a curve, not for a view, not for rest. The presence behind me shifted sometimes, leaning, pressing slightly as if curious. I dared not look. Every time I did, the figure or figures disappeared, leaving only the faintest trace. A cold patch of air, the lingering smell of damp cloth, metallic like frost, like ozone after rain. By the time dawn broke, the mountains began to soften under pale light, and the road straightened. I glanced once more at the back seat. Empty. No depressions, no sign of what had been there. I reached back slowly, fingertips grazing the cushion. Cold. I tried the heater. Kicked in immediately, warm air finally filling the cab. But the chill hadn't entirely left me. I parked at the next rest stop, unhooked the rig, and tried to shake off the night. Other drivers exchanged tired nods, talking about the storm, the fog, the slippery roads. I kept my silence. How could I explain what I felt? The weight, the breathing, the fleeting shapes, the frost forming in midair? I've told a few close friends, other long-haul drivers, but most dismiss it. Exhaustion, shadows, imagination. Maybe they're right. Maybe it was. But I know what I felt. I know what I saw. And that presence, that backseat passenger, never fully left me. Even now, years later, I avoid driving alone through that stretch of the Smoky Mountains at night. Every curve, every shadowed bend, every gust of wind pressing against the cab door brings a memory of cold breath behind me, of shapes at the mirror's edge. Sometimes, long after I've parked for the night, I swear I hear it again. Soft, measured breathing, just behind me, waiting, patient. Some nights, when I close my eyes in my own bed, I feel the weight in the seat beside me. I never see her there, not fully, but I feel the press of it, the unshakable presence. And I know that some miles on the road, some passengers never leave no matter how far you drive. I still feel it sometimes, that cold pressure, that unblinking weight in the cab. And every time I drive through the Smoky Mountains at night, I instinctively check the back seat. I've been behind the wheel of a rig for nearly 20 years. I know the highways, the back roads, the shortcuts, and the stretches of asphalt where your eyes play tricks on you. But there's one stretch in the Appalachians I will never forget. A road that doesn't obey time. It started on a quiet spring evening. I was hauling machinery from Knoxville to Morgantown, my old Peterbilt 579 groaning under the weight. The sun had set hours ago, leaving the mountains in near-complete darkness. I was tired, craving the shortest route, when I saw it on the GPS. A shortcut through a narrow stretch of highway I'd never taken before. The road was unmarked in places, barely more than a strip of black asphalt weaving through dense forest. I hesitated, but the shortcut promised hours shaved off my trip, and I needed those hours. The first mile was normal. The rig's tires hissed over wet patches, the diesel engine thrumming beneath me, CB crackling faintly with distant chatter from truckers I couldn't see. The air smelled of rain-damp pine and earth, metallic with ozone from the storm that had passed earlier. I passed mile marker 1, then 2, and felt a subtle unease, like the forest itself was watching. Then the markers started repeating. Mile marker 3 appeared, then 2 again, then 3 once more. I blinked, thinking I'd misread it, but the markers didn't lie. The fog thickened, settling in the cab like a living thing. My dashboard clock spun backward a few seconds, then corrected itself, then spun backward again. The sense of time unraveled, subtle at first, then undeniable. I checked my fuel gauge. It dropped unnaturally fast, yet my engine hummed as if nothing was wrong. I tried to reassure myself. It's a glitch. GPS, dashboard, fog. Nothing more. I kept going, slowing at blind curves, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles ached. But the forest seemed endless, twisting in on itself. Every exit vanished the moment I looked for it. Trees pressed against the cab, the mist swallowing the road behind me. The isolation was total. The CB went silent. No trucks, no voices, nothing but the hum of my engine and the occasional creak of the suspension. Then I saw the headlights. At first, I thought it was a regular rig catching up to me. But there was something wrong. There was no sound. No diesel roar, no tire hiss, nothing. Just lights. 2 massive eyes glowing in the darkness, perfectly aligned with my mirrors. The truck kept pace, keeping the same distance, matching every bend, every swerve, every acceleration. I swerved off the road, hoping to escape. Mud sprayed against the cab, tires skidding, yet when I corrected and looked again, the rig was still there. Still silently following, still perfectly matched to my speed. Panic began to creep in. I took every exit I could find, every side road, even attempted to backtrack. But the shortcut didn't allow escape. Every turn brought me back to the same stretch, the same markers repeating, the same darkness pressing in. My cab grew colder. I could feel goosebumps under the fluorescent glow of the dashboard. The vibration from the steering wheel felt unnatural, almost like the road itself was pulsing in response to my fear. Minutes or hours, there was no way to tell, passed. The fog thickened to the point that headlights ahead looked like phantom eyes suspended in mist. I tried to call on the CB, my voice shaking. Breaker 19. Anyone copy. Only static answered, buzzing faintly with what almost sounded like whispers. Names, phrases I couldn't quite make out, overlapping and fading into the hum of the cab. I pressed on, heart hammering, hands slick with sweat. At one point, the lights ahead split into 2, then 3. Phantom rigs, I realized, silently pacing me, their positions impossible, almost like a mirrored convoy existing outside reality. Couldn't stop, couldn't slow. Every mile I drove felt longer than it should, yet my GPS insisted I had barely moved. My logs, my carefully kept logs, showed hundreds of miles in what my perception measured as 20 minutes. I tried to convince myself I was hallucinating. Exhaustion, lack of sleep, stress, mountain fog, all of it. But rational thought didn't change the physics of what I was experiencing. The road didn't obey normal rules. The markers repeated. The rigs followed. Time warped. Fuel dropped, then rose again mysteriously. My tires, my engine, my rig, everything familiar, felt alien. Eventually, the trees began to thin, fog lifting slightly. The shortcut, that unholy stretch of asphalt, spat me out near the town I had started from, the lights of Morgantown twinkling in the distance as if nothing had happened. I checked the dashboard. The clock now read hours ahead of when I had started the shortcut. My logbook, digital and paper, both indicated I had driven over 300 miles in 20 minutes. My stomach churned. My hands shook. I parked at the nearest truck stop, shutting down the engine. The vibration in the cab faded, but the silence that followed was heavier than anything I'd experienced on the road. Other truckers were there, chatting, joking about weather and traffic. I forced a smile, bought a coffee, and stared at the rig. The shortcut, mile markers, phantom rigs, warp time was gone from the GPS now, the road no longer marked, no longer accessible. I've driven the Appalachians countless times since. I've tried to find that road again. Never again. The maps, the GPS, even old logs, I've scoured them. Nothing shows it. Nothing records it. I tell myself it was fatigue, a dream, something my mind conjured out of miles and monotony. But the memory is too vivid. The smell of wet earth and ozone, the cold pressing into the cab, the vibration, the silent rigs, the clock spinning backward. I've never spoken about it openly. Most drivers would laugh. But I know what I saw. I know what I experienced. And every time I drive alone at night through the mountains, I feel that stretch of road lurking just outside reality, waiting. Some nights, when the cab is quiet and the highway stretches endlessly under muted stars, I swear I feel the subtle vibration returning. The road calls in whispers and headlights, just beyond vision, just beyond comprehension. And I know that some shortcuts, some roads, they don't just bend geography, they bend time itself. I still check the mirrors. I still glance at the gauges. And I still keep one hand on the wheel just in case. I still feel it sometimes. The subtle pull, the impossible hum, the silent convoy just behind me. Some nights, I wonder if I ever left that road at all. I've been driving across the Southwest for nearly 2 decades. Desert nights, long stretches of asphalt, the hum of tires on sun-baked roads. These were my world. I know the highways, the rest stops, the occasional sandstorm that can reduce visibility to nothing. But there's one stretch of Arizona desert I'll never forget. A night so quiet, so wrong. It makes me question what's real and what isn't. Started late, well past midnight. I was hauling auto parts from Phoenix to Tucson in my 2018 Kenworth W900, pulling a full trailer. The desert had cooled after the day's heat, the asphalt still radiating faint warmth. The sky was cloudless, stars muted behind a thin haze. My CB crackled with distant chatter, a few drivers checking mile markers, but mostly silence. The monotony of the road can make you talk to yourself, or to the ghosts of past trips. So I was already a little keyed up, eyes constantly scanning the horizon. Then I saw them. At first, I thought it was a mirage. A faint glimmer of headlights in the distance, a few trucks lined up as if on parade. I slowed instinctively, tapping my brakes lightly, and fell in behind the line. It should have sounded normal, the engines, the diesel, the faint roar of tires. But there was nothing. No sound. The trucks didn't hum, didn't breathe. They just existed. As I fell into the flow, the air around me changed. It smelled heavy, metallic, like old oil and desert dust baked for decades. My windows were up, the AC on, but I could taste it, the grit in the air, the heat of something unnatural. And the drivers, God, the drivers, they didn't move. Their hands rested on the steering wheels, eyes fixed straight ahead. No conversation, no blinks, no acknowledgement that I existed. Just empty, hollow figures staring at nothing. I tried to pass, gunned my engine slightly, but the convoy stretched endlessly. No matter how fast I went, they matched me perfectly. They surrounded me, blocking every attempt at escape, forming a wall of silent metal and human-shaped shadows. My stomach churned, sweat forming along my hairline, goosebumps rising along my arms despite the desert heat. I hit the CB. Breaker 19. Anyone out here? Static answered, then faint, low moans filtered through the speaker. At first, I thought it was interference, but then I realized they were voices, whispering, warning me. Names I didn't know, directions I didn't recognize. Please, don't travel these roads at night. Turn back. I kept driving, heart hammering. The convoy never slowed, never faltered. Sometimes, in the mirrors, I thought I saw figures leaning slightly toward me, as if curious. But every time I looked directly, they were gone, replaced by the same unblinking faces staring straight ahead. The line of trucks stretched far beyond what I could see, curving with the road like a living entity, endless and patient. Time seemed to distort. Minutes became hours or maybe seconds. My dashboard clock spun backward briefly, then corrected itself. My fuel gauge dropped sharply, then jumped back up. The desert around me seemed to bend, the horizon shimmering with heat and shadow. My cab vibrated subtly, not from the engine but from something else. The road itself seemed to hum in response to my fear. I pressed on, trying to rationalize. Maybe some old military convoy from decades ago had been abandoned here, their engines long dead, their bodies long gone. Maybe hallucination, maybe fatigue, but rationalization didn't stop the smell. The heavy metallic scent of old oil, the dust, the unshakable feeling of being observed. At one point, I swerved onto a side road, trying to break free. For a moment, I thought I succeeded. My mirrors showed nothing but empty desert, the stars unchanged, the asphalt untouched. Relief surged. I exhaled, the cab quiet. But then the low moans returned, emanating from the radio. Don't travel these roads at night. The static carried whispers, names, phrases that didn't make sense but sounded real, urgent. I slammed back onto the highway, desperate to put distance between me and whatever that convoy was. The trucks were still there, stretching endlessly, surrounding me once more, engines silent, drivers unblinking. I floored it, swerving, taking every possible turn. Yet they remained, pacing me perfectly, surrounding the rig like a phantom wall. I didn't stop until the first hints of dawn appeared on the horizon. The desert softened under pale light, the asphalt now ordinary, unremarkable. The convoy was gone. No tracks, no shadows, no signs of their passage. The CB crackled faintly one last time, and then nothing. Silence. The desert looked empty, as if the night's events had been erased entirely. I parked at the nearest rest stop, hands trembling. Other drivers were there, joking about sandstorms and heat, sharing stories of wildlife and road fatigue. I smiled weakly, drank my coffee, and said nothing. How could I explain what I'd seen? The endless line of silent trucks, the unblinking drivers, the moaning radio? Even now, years later, I can feel it sometimes. The hum beneath the cab when I'm alone at night. The weight of unseen eyes in the mirrors. The faint metallic smell that lingers when I pass the desert. I've avoided those stretches since, sticking to main highways, well-traveled routes. Some roads, I've learned, carry more than asphalt and paint. Some roads carry time, memory, and whatever that silent convoy was, a warning, a remnant, a presence waiting for night to fall. I still remember the low moans on the CB. I still remember the faces, unblinking and patient, stretching endlessly down the highway. And I know now that some nights, some stretches of road, are meant to be avoided. Not for accidents or wildlife, for things we weren't meant to see. I still check the mirrors. I still listen to the radio. And I never, ever drive those Arizona desert roads at night. Some roads leave marks you can't see. Some miles leave echoes you carry forever. I'll never forget the silent convoy. I've been driving the back roads of Louisiana for over 15 years, mostly hauling timber and industrial equipment. I know the swampy stretches where the asphalt disappears under fog, where the cypress knees poke through marshes, and where the smell of rot and decay is just part of the landscape. But one night, on a stretch of back road I'd used countless times, the swamp fog became more than a nuisance. It became aware. It was late, past 1 a.m., and I was heading north from Lake Charles toward Shreveport in my 2016 Volvo VNL. The rig was heavy with logs, the trailer squeaking faintly with every bump. The fog had been rolling in thicker the further I drove, reducing my visibility to maybe 20 feet. My CB crackled intermittently with distant chatter. Drivers somewhere else, checking mile markers, complaining about weather, but the swamp was silent. Absolutely silent, aside from the hum of my diesel engine and the occasional slap of tires on wet asphalt. I was keeping a steady pace when I noticed it, shadows flickering at the edge of my headlights. At first, I thought it was the fog itself, mist catching the light, distorting the trees. But as I drove on, the shadows coalesced. Faces, human, unmistakable, pressed against the trunks of trees, pale and expressionless, staring at me. I slammed on the brakes, heart hammering. I rubbed my eyes, convinced exhaustion or the monotony of the fog was playing tricks. But when I looked again, the faces didn't disappear. They shifted slightly, moving closer with each passing tree line. I slowed to a crawl. The fog smelled heavier now, sour, rotten, like a swamp that had been stagnant for decades. My hands gripped the wheel tighter. I scanned the ditch alongside the road. Faces, dozens of them, emerged from the muck, pressed against the roadside, their eyes reflecting the dim glow of my headlights. They didn't speak, didn't blink. They simply watched, silently, patiently. I tried the CB. Breaker 19. Anyone out there? I'm near a mile marker. Static. Then faint whispers. So faint I could barely make out the words, yet unmistakably human. Don't go. Don't leave, stay. I shook my head, convincing myself it was interference, exhaustion, anything plausible. But the smell, the pressure in the cab, the way my rig seemed sluggish made rational explanations feel hollow. I hit the gas, trying to pull away. The rig responded sluggishly, barely moving forward. It felt as if the highway itself were holding me, gripping the tires with invisible hands. My knuckles whitened on the wheel. I shifted gears, pressed harder on the accelerator. The diesel roared, but acceleration was minimal. The faces seemed to lean closer as I struggled forward, pale features almost pressed against the cab windows in my mirrors. Goosebumps crawled along my arms, and the air inside the cab turned cold despite the humid Louisiana night. I tried to turn my headlights off, thinking maybe the light was drawing them closer. Nothing changed. Every bend, every tree line, revealed more faces. Children, adults, expressions twisted and blank at the same time. One or two seemed to follow my movement, their hollow eyes tracking me as I swerved slightly to avoid the deepest sections of fog. I tried to rationalize it. Swamp reflections, branches caught in the mist, old tree trunks resembling faces. But the movements, the proximity, the smell of rot, and the pressure on the truck proved otherwise. Something was here, something tied to this stretch of road. The cab vibrated subtly, as though the earth beneath me was alive, testing me, forcing me to confront whatever had settled in the fog. Panic began to creep in. I considered stopping, waiting for daylight, but the idea made my skin crawl. Something in the shadows didn't want me to halt. It didn't want me to escape. I had to move, had to find solid ground, had to leave the fog behind. I spotted a side road, barely visible through the haze. With a deep breath, I swerved onto it, tires skidding slightly on wet earth. The acceleration felt immediate now, responsive, as if leaving the main road released the highway's grip. Glancing in my mirrors, I saw them, still in the fog, still pressed against the road, still watching. The faces didn't follow the side road, but their presence lingered, a memory etched into the rearview glass. The side road led to a cleared area, a small gravel lot by an abandoned gas station. I parked the rig, engine still running, and sat for a long moment. The fog dissipated slowly, the swamp returning to its usual quiet darkness. No faces, no whispers, nothing but the faint hum of the engine and the distant call of a night bird. I ran my hands over my face, tried to steady my breathing, tried to convince myself it was exhaustion, imagination, anything rational. I didn't move for at least 30 minutes. When I finally drove on, taking the longer route to Shreveport, I glanced in the mirrors often. Even miles later, the fog seemed to cling to the edges of reality. I never saw faces again, but the memory lingered, etched into my mind. Every shadow, every tree line, every patch of mist now carries a whisper of that night. Other truckers, when I've tried to explain, shrug, say it's fatigue or swamp reflections. Maybe it is, but I remember the pressure on the cab, the way the rig resisted me, the smell of rot, the hollow eyes staring long after I turned the wheel. I remember the whispering static of the CB, faint voices warning me, patient, insistent. And I know I wasn't imagining the highway itself trying to stop me, trying to hold me among those faces. I still avoid that back road, sticking to main highways. I check my mirrors obsessively when driving through fog. I never go out alone after dark in the swampy backroads of Louisiana anymore. But some nights, when I close my eyes in my own bed, I see them. Faces pressed to tree trunks, in ditches, leaning from shadows, watching, waiting, patient. Some roads leave marks you can't see. Some miles leave memories you carry forever. That night, that stretch of highway, those faces, they aren't gone. And I know I carry a piece of them with me every time I drive past a swamp, every time the fog thickens under muted stars. I still feel the weight of that night, the lingering presence in mirrors, the faint echo of whispers in the CB static. Some nights, I swear I see them again, just for a moment, at the edge of my vision, patient, unblinking. I've been driving the highways and byways of Montana for over 20 years. I know the curves, the wind patterns, the way the asphalt stretches endlessly across prairies and mountains. I've hauled everything from grain to machinery, logging trucks, refrigerated loads, you name it. But one night in the Eastern Plains, something happened that I still can't explain, and I've been haunted by it ever since. It was late September, the kind of night where the air carries that dry metallic chill that seeps through boots and jackets. I was transporting a shipment of industrial machinery from Billings to Missoula in my 2015 Freightliner Cascadia, pulling a full flatbed loaded with heavy crates secured by thick chains and straps. The route was familiar. Interchanges, long straightaways, a few hills. But that night, the usual quiet of the Montana roads felt oppressive. The wind was still, the prairie flat and endless. My CB crackled faintly, a few drivers checking in on schedules, but most of the time it was just silence. Around 1:30 a.m., somewhere near a lonely interchange south of Lewistown, I felt it first, a subtle uneven vibration through the trailer. I assumed it was a chain or strap loosening, so I glanced at the cargo through the small side window. Nothing seemed wrong. Then, a sudden, loud bang echoed from the back of the trailer. I slammed on the brakes, the Cascadia shuddering as if the road itself were alive. I jumped out and ran to the rear. The crates were still stacked perfectly, the chains taut. No sign of movement, no gust of wind, nothing. The prairie was silent except for my own breathing and the distant call of a coyote. I shook my head, muttering to myself, just the chains settling, nothing more. I climbed back in, tightened the straps again, and continued. The hum of the diesel was comforting, normal, but uneasy. My eyes kept darting to the mirrors, half expecting to see something out of place. Minutes later, my GPS blinked. The screen went black, then flickered, displaying only coordinates that led to nowhere. Coordinates that, if plotted, would put me in the middle of the plains, far from the road. I checked my map, my phone. Everything confirmed I was still on the highway, but the device insisted otherwise. I laughed nervously, blaming it on a satellite glitch, yet the unease in my chest grew heavier. I pulled over at the next rest stop, a small clearing with a single, flickering light. The night air smelled sharp, metallic, like ozone after a storm. Even though no storm had passed, I decided to sleep in the cab for a while, hoping morning would reset both my mind and the GPS. I left the engine running for heat and lay back against the seat, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. Around 3 a.m., I woke. The sound was unmistakable. Metal scraping against metal. Chains dragged across the trailer bed, rattling against the crates. I froze, straining to hear. The cab was sealed, windows up, no wind moving outside, no sound of animals. My stomach turned over. Slowly, I climbed out, flashlight in hand, shining down the trailer. Every crate was still there, every chain secure, or so it seemed. But the scraping continued, moving in a slow, deliberate rhythm, as if something was pacing across the load. I called out, "Hello? Is someone back there?" My voice sounded absurd in the vast emptiness. The scraping stopped for a heartbeat, then resumed, closer to the front of the trailer this time. The hair on my arms stood on end. I checked the straps again. Nothing had moved, yet the sound persisted, dragging from one end of the trailer to the other. Goosebumps ran along my neck. I climbed back into the cab, shaking. The GPS blinked once more and returned to normal, displaying the route as if nothing had happened. My pulse still raced, my hands gripping the wheel tightly. I stayed alert the rest of the night, eyes scanning mirrors, listening for every sound. Every mile felt longer, heavier, as if the machinery itself were alive, restless, aware. By dawn, I reached a small clearing off the highway to stretch my legs. That's when I saw it. One crate, the largest one, a reinforced steel box, was missing. Gone. Not toppled, not moved, not open, just gone. I walked the area, scanning the roadside, checking the trailer bed, even tracing the tire marks back the way I'd come. Nothing. No evidence, no tracks, no sign that anyone or anything had touched it. I called dispatch immediately, heart pounding. "One of the crates, it's gone. I don't know how. I swear it was secured last night." The dispatcher's tone was polite, skeptical. "We'll flag it as lost cargo. Probably an accounting error. But I know what I saw, or rather didn't see. I know what I heard. The chains dragging, the scraping, the cold metallic scent that lingered inside the cab long after I'd stepped out. Even now, years later, I remember the way the trailer felt that night. Heavy, almost breathing beneath me. I still check straps and chains obsessively. I avoid that interchange whenever possible. Some nights, when I drive through Montana's plains after dark, I swear I can hear a faint metallic dragging in the distance, just beyond the horizon, echoing across the empty asphalt. I've asked other drivers, shared the story with friends. Some laugh, some nod politely, some don't respond. I don't blame them. Sounds insane. But I know what I experienced. Machinery that moved on its own, chains scraping without wind, a crate vanishing without a trace. Whatever it was, it followed me for hours. Its presence subtle but undeniable, an invisible weight pressing through the cab. The highway holds memories. Some are just stretches of asphalt and worn mile markers. Others carry something else. That night, that lost load, and the dragging chains. I carry that memory with me. I carry it whenever I haul a heavy rig, whenever I drive through a lonely interchange after dark. Some things on the road aren't meant to be explained, only survived. I still check the mirrors. I still listen to the trailer. And I know that somewhere in the endless Montana night, that crate or whatever replaced it still waits. Some loads aren't meant to reach their destination, and some nights aren't meant to end. I'll never forget that stretch of highway, the scraping chains, and the crate that disappeared without a trace. Halloween parties were never really my thing, but my friends insisted I host one that year because my apartment was big enough, and I had the perfect spooky vibe. Translation: I owned a fog machine and a Bluetooth speaker. My name's Denial, but everyone calls me Danny. I'm 26, pretty chill, the kind of guy who'd rather stay home gaming, but I'd been trying to grow my TikTok lately, so I figured a Halloween party live couldn't hurt. Show the decorations, the costumes, the music. Nothing too crazy. People started arriving around 10. Cheap plastic masks, thrift store capes, fake fangs, the usual. Someone brought a speaker that blasted remixed horror themes. Someone else brought glow sticks. The smell of pumpkin candles mixed with spilled soda and cheap perfume. Not pleasant, but tolerable. By midnight, the place was packed. My living room was just a blur of masks and noise. That's when I went live. "Yo, what's up everyone?" I yelled over the music. "Halloween party at my place. Check the vibes." People in the chat rolled in fast. "W party bro. Show the costumes. Let's go." I turned my camera to everyone dancing, drinking, shouting. Just normal chaos. Someone was dressed as a clown. Someone else wore a skull mask. Another guy wore a cape so long he kept stepping on it and swearing. Everyone was laughing. Everyone was loud. Except one person. I didn't notice him at first. Not until the chat did. "Who's the tall dude? Bro, that pumpkin mask is creepy WTF. Behind you." I frowned and turned my phone slightly, checking the preview. There, near the back of the room, half hidden by shadows, stood a tall figure wearing a cracked pumpkin mask. It wasn't bright orange like normal props. It looked old, dull, dry. The surface was rough, peeling, like a real pumpkin left too long in the sun. No costume under it, just a long black coat. And he wasn't moving at all. I thought maybe someone was pranking. "Oh damn, nice costume dude," I shouted toward him. He didn't react, didn't wave, didn't nod, didn't even shift his weight. Just stood there, staring straight through the crowd at me. When I looked away to read the chat again. "Why he not moving? Bro, check him please. He behind you again?" I turned around. He was gone. Just gone. Completely vanished into the crowd. I shrugged it off. Probably one of my friends messing with me. Y'all always want something creepy to happen on Halloween. But the unease had already crept into my chest. Like a cold weight. I moved around the room with the camera showing snacks, decorations, people doing dumb dances. Everything normal again. Then the chat blew up. "He's there again. Right behind you, I swear. Turn left, turn left." I whipped around so fast I almost dropped my phone. Nothing. Just costumes, laughter, and fog machine smoke drifting lazily. I laughed anxiously. Okay. Maybe you guys are seeing reflections or something. But then I caught something out of the corner of my eye. A tall shape standing near the hallway. Just a flash of orange and black. When I turned my head fully, nobody was there. My throat tightened. I tried to play it off. Someone's messing with me, I swear. The party carried on, but something felt wrong. The air felt stale, heavy, like the room lacked oxygen. Every few minutes, the smell of rot crept in. Faint but unmistakable, like a fruit left to die. I kept glancing around, expecting to see that cracked pumpkin mask again. Then my friend Layla tapped my arm. "Bro, why you look like you saw a ghost?" I laughed nervously. "Someone creepy is trolling me. Probably Umar or Fahim." She shook her head. "Both of them left an hour ago." That hit me harder than it should have. I lifted my phone again, and the chat was now exploding nonstop. "He's right behind you, please look. Stop, he's so close. Bro, turn around now." I spun around, heart pounding. Nothing. But this time, I felt something, like someone brushing past me. Not forcefully, just soft fabric grazing my back. Cold shot up my spine. I ended the live, or tried to. My finger tapped the X. Nothing happened. The button depressingly faded but didn't close. I tried again. Harder. Again. My phone refused. My living room suddenly felt too loud, too crowded, too hot, but somehow freezing at the same time, like cold air was leaking from cracks in the walls. I decided I needed to step away. The bathroom upstairs would be quiet. I climbed the steps, the noise fading behind me. The hallway was dim, lit only by an orange-tinted bulb. I shut the bathroom door and locked it, breathing hard. I looked at myself in the mirror, sweat on my forehead, pulse visible in my neck. I raised my phone. Still live. Still stuck. The chat was now moving faster than I'd ever seen. "Bro, behind you. The stairs. It's coming up." My blood froze. I turned toward the bathroom door, my hand hovering over the lock. The house was quieter now. Too quiet. Only the distant thumping of music below, and something else. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Dragging slightly, like one foot wasn't lifting properly. Coming up the stairs. One step. Pause. Another step. Pause. The sound scraped at my nerves. Sounded wrong. Not like shoes. More like something wet sliding against wood. My voice cracked as I whispered, "Who's there?" Silence. I bent down, heart hammering, and looked under the crack of the bathroom door. I almost screamed, but nothing came out. 2 feet were standing just outside the door. Not human feet. Bare. Filthy. Skin pale and cracked like dried clay. Toes bent at strange angles. 1 foot swollen, dripping with something dark onto the tile. Blood? Rot? Couldn't tell. Then a slow, scraping inhale sounded from the other side. A voice, low and distorted, whispered, "Da'ani." My legs nearly buckled. I stumbled back, knocking into the sink. My phone slipped from my sweaty hands. I grabbed it again in panic. Still live. Chat in full meltdown. "Run, please run. Bro, open window. He's at the door. He's at the door. He's at the door." The doorknob twitched. I slapped my hand over my mouth to stifle the whimper crawling out of my throat. The knob turned slightly, then stopped, then slowly began to turn the other way, metal squealing softly. My body felt paralyzed. My breath stuck in my throat. Tears blurred my vision. The door shuddered, like something leaned its full weight against it. Then everything stopped. Silence. Not even breathing on the other side now. Just waiting. After nearly a full minute, the footsteps resumed, slower this time, heading back down the hall. I didn't open the door. Didn't move. Not until my phone buzzed violently in my hand. The live finally crashed. Screen went black. I thought that was the end. But it wasn't. The next morning, still shaking, I replayed the live recording. I had to know I wasn't insane. What I saw made me drop my phone. The tall figure in the cracked pumpkin mask appeared in at least 7 different parts of the video. First, he stood across the room. Then behind the couch. Then behind a group of friends. Then right behind me, arms hanging, head tilted. Never moving on camera, but always closer each time I turned away. The final frame froze on a shot of me walking toward the stairs. The figure was inches behind me, hand raised, reaching for my shoulder. But I never felt a touch. I never heard him. He wasn't in the room. Only in the video. Only when I wasn't looking. And last night, someone slipped a note under my apartment door. A thick, damp piece of paper. Only 4 words written in shaky handwriting. "You looked away." I've been driving I-95 for over 20 years, mostly long hauls from Florida up to New York. Nights like that one are usually routine, just me, my rig, and the endless ribbon of asphalt under the stars. My name's Carl, and I drive a 2015 Kenworth T680, a sleeper cab that's seen more miles than most cars on the road. I know these highways, every curve, rest stop, and mile marker. But what happened that night, I still can't explain it. It was nearing 2 a.m., a clear sky above, but the air thick with the kind of silence that makes you notice every little sound. I was southbound, empty trailer, light load of auto parts in the sleeper. My CB radio was crackling with static, which isn't unusual at that hour. The further north I drove, the more the static thickened, like the highway itself was interfering with the signal. I flipped through the channels. Nothing. Just the usual hiss and occasional pop. Then I heard it. "Carl." I froze. My hands tightened on the wheel. The voice was soft but insistent, carrying through the cab as clearly as if someone was sitting beside me. I looked around, no one. I checked the mirrors. Empty highway. Carl watched the mile marker. "Don't stop yet." I swallowed hard. My pulse picked up. The voice didn't sound like any trucker I'd ever met. It was calm, almost fatherly, but there was something underneath it. A weight, a knowledge. The kind of certainty only someone who knows exactly who you are could have. I tried to speak into the CB. "Breaker. Who is this?" Silence. Static. Then, "Carl, your rig. Left rear brake. It's loose." I glanced at the dashboard. My brake light blinked faintly. I'd done a pre-trip earlier in the day. Everything was fine. My heart sank. This wasn't just a coincidence. I tried to flip channels, unplug the radio, even powered down the rig's electronics. Nothing helped. The voice followed, soft whispers echoing through the cab. Warnings, suggestions, hints of danger ahead. It knew my route, my trailer, my daughter's name, Maggie, before I even spoke it aloud. It knew where I'd stopped last week at a truck stop near Savannah. I pressed on, trying to rationalize. Maybe someone had hacked a repeater, maybe I was exhausted. I'd driven through storms worse than this, but this wasn't weather or fatigue. The voice anticipated my reactions, predicted my movements. And then it spoke again. Abandoned rest area, exit 14, stop. I slowed, exiting cautiously. The rest area was empty, desolate. The lights flickered weakly, long since burned out or broken. Wind rustled debris across the pavement, and I realized the silence had grown heavier, the kind that presses in around you, fills your skull with its own weight. I parked, engine idling, doors locked, feeling exposed yet trapped. The CB sparked suddenly, a flare of static, and the voice whispered one last word before falling silent. Leave. I sat there, heart hammering, unable to move. The cab felt colder despite the heater running full blast. My skin prickled, goosebumps forming along my arms. Every instinct screamed to stay in the cab, to just sit and wait. But the word lingered, pressing on my mind like a warning carved into my skull. I thought about the highway behind me. The empty lanes stretched endlessly, yet somehow I could feel eyes, or maybe the presence of something, watching, waiting. The world outside was quiet, unnaturally quiet, the night almost solid. Minutes felt like hours. I finally shook myself, started the rig, and eased back onto the highway. The CB remained dead. Static, yes, but no voice. It was gone. I drove in silence, every shadow, every glint of moonlight on the asphalt making me flinch. By the time I reached the next truck stop in Georgia, the sun was starting to lift over the horizon. Normality returned slowly, the smell of diesel and coffee, other drivers chatting on radios, children's laughter from a distant family in the diner. I wanted to convince myself it had been exhaustion, maybe an overactive imagination. But I knew what I had heard. I knew the voice had followed me, known me, and warned me in ways no one else could. I've avoided that stretch of I-95 at night ever since. Even years later, when I pass that mile marker, I feel the cab grow cold, a tiny static whisper brushing at my mind. Sometimes, late at night in quiet rest stops, I swear I can hear it again. My name, soft and insistent, like a shadow of the past following me along the road. Some things on these highways aren't mechanical failures. They aren't fatigue or storms or bad radio signals. Sometimes the road reaches into you, finds you, and reminds you that someone or something knows every detail of your life. That night I felt it, I heard it, and I can't forget. I still check the CB every time I start the rig after dark. I still glance at the empty lanes behind me, and I still carry the memory, quiet and insistent, that some nights the highway speaks directly to the driver, and it knows your name. I've been behind the wheel for over 25 years, mostly long hauls across the Southwest. My name's Ray, and I drive a 2018 Freightliner Cascadia with a 53-foot trailer. Nights like the one I'm about to tell you about are the ones that make you question everything you think you know about the road. It was near 1:30 a.m., somewhere in West Texas, heading westbound on I-20. I had been running all day, hauling refrigerated produce from Dallas to El Paso. The desert stretched endlessly on either side, flat and dark, punctuated only by the occasional reflective road sign and the distant shimmer of highway lights. My CB had been quiet all night, the static thick but uneventful. That's when I saw it. A small truck stop glowing dimly in the distance, the kind of place I'd normally ignore. But tonight I felt tired, worn down, and it looked welcoming. The GPS blinked as I approached, displaying coordinates I didn't recognize. It was as if it had no record of this stop at all. I shrugged, thinking maybe it was some kind of newly added place. I pulled in, the tires crunching over gravel, and noticed the lights flickering intermittently. The pumps were running, the signage buzzing faintly, but there wasn't a soul in sight. No other trucks, no attendants, nothing. I cut the engine, stepping out into the desert air. It smelled of fuel, hot asphalt, and dust. Everything was unnaturally quiet. I expected a hum from a refrigerator unit, a dog barking, a distant engine, but there was nothing. The silence pressed against me like a wall. Inside, the place looked normal. Tables set, menus on the counters, coffee machines humming, but the emptiness was palpable. My footsteps echoed against the linoleum floors, and I realized the dust on the floor hadn't been disturbed until I looked closer. Footprints were forming as if someone had just walked by. They led toward the showers in the back. Instinctively, I followed. Each step felt heavier, as if the air itself resisted movement. The lights flickered more violently, and a cold draft brushed past me. My skin prickled, goosebumps forming along my arms. I rounded the corner toward the showers, the footprints ending at the door. The moment I stepped inside, the lights died. Darkness swallowed everything, the hum of the fluorescent fixtures vanishing. I fumbled for the wall switch, but the air was heavy, almost viscous. My pulse rattled in my ears. Then I heard it, a faint scrape, like nails dragging along metal, echoing somewhere behind me. I spun around. Nothing, just the shadows, stretching unnaturally along the walls. I ran out, heart hammering, and the world had changed. The truck stop was gone. In its place, there was nothing but highway and desert, the asphalt endless under a starless sky. My rig sat where I'd parked it, but the tires hadn't left a mark on the gravel. It was as if I had never stopped at all. I staggered back to the cab, trying to rationalize. Maybe it was exhaustion, heat stroke, or the desert playing tricks on me. But the air still smelled faintly of coffee and fuel, lingering like a ghost. I started the engine, the cab vibrating under my fingers. I checked the GPS. It still showed the same coordinates, somewhere in the middle of nowhere. The highway stretched straight ahead for miles. No exits, no signs of civilization, nothing to mark where I had been. Every mile marker I passed seemed familiar, but slightly wrong. Off by a few hundred feet here, a number repeated there. The CB crackled to life suddenly, a low static hum filling the cab. I grabbed the mic. "Breaker, anyone?" Silence. Then a whisper, soft, almost friendly, yet entirely wrong. "Don't turn back." I froze. The voice didn't belong to anyone I knew. It knew I was there, alone. It knew what I had seen. I didn't argue, didn't respond. My only thought was to keep moving forward. Hours, or maybe minutes, later, the desert finally thinned, the highway curving gently toward a cluster of distant lights. I recognized the exit, just past a familiar rest area. I eased the truck off the road, hands shaking, trying to convince myself it had all been a hallucination. But when I looked in the mirrors, I saw something else. Faint outlines like smoke, hovering where the truck stop should have been. Just shadows, indistinct, shifting slightly before fading completely. By the time I reached a staff truck stop 20 miles ahead, the normal hum of diesel engines and fluorescent lights felt almost hostile in their reality. Other drivers chatted on the radios, laughed over takeout coffee, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling that the desert was watching, waiting for the next weary trucker to pull over. I even went back on the highway later that week, tried to find the stop again. Nothing. The stretch of road was empty, undisturbed, perfectly normal. But sometimes, late at night, when the CB crackles with static or the desert wind howls over the asphalt, I swear I can see it again. A faint glow in the distance, the outline of pumps and tables, waiting. I don't stop anymore. I drive through, and sometimes, I catch myself looking at the empty desert beside the highway, expecting to see footprints forming out of nowhere, leading toward the showers that no longer exist. Some nights, I still hear it faintly through the cab, the scrape of shoes across linoleum, a whisper in my ear telling me to leave. And I do, always, because the highway, it keeps secrets, and some truck stops aren't meant to exist in this world. But they exist somewhere, And I know if I linger too long, it will take me too. I still look for that flicker of lights in the distance, but I never stop, because some things on these highways don't want you to.